Skeleton Crew, the Star Wars show review. This is going to be entirely spoiler-free. If you would like to hear what I have to say about the individual episodes, the link to the playlist, let's see, I think it is, my overall Star Wars franchise vlogs playlist is in the description box. I might spoil Star Wars, other Star Wars, possibly even all Star Wars leading up to, but not including any of the show. I haven't decided yet, so just be forewarned. Yes, if you've watched several of the live-action Disney Plus Star Wars shows, you more or less know a lot of what to expect. So I'm just going to very briefly run through, really solid effects, including a lot of practical effects. There is a grit to a lot of what we see. Everything feels lived in. It feels real, worn, so very much like the original trilogy, clearly taking inspiration from there, much like the sequel trilogy also did. The acting is good to great, occasionally. Not every single child actor or tween actor, as is the case here, is absolutely amazing, but certainly they're good for the age and what is asked of them. The let's see, they tend to be placed, sometime within the overall Star Wars timeline, and fit within that, and maybe have something to say about that particular time. There will be at least one cute, character that your kids will beg for you to buy for them, often a droid or some kind of alien creature. And I think that just about does it for the overall tropes, other than, of course, that the ending doesn't quite stick the landing and doesn't completely deliver on the promise of earlier episodes. This is one of the better ones, I will say that. There are absolutely things that really, really work for the ending, and it feels like it was planned to be the ending. It doesn't feel like they just kind of ran out of steam and didn't quite know how to close it. Endings are difficult. I 100% acknowledge that, and it is something Disney Plus live-action shows are struggling with, Star Wars and MCU. Yeah, that brings us to the specifics of this one. So, first of all, really, really love all the pirate stuff. This is exactly the kind of thing I wanted to see when I was 7 years old, reading a lot of pirate books. And yeah, 30 years later, it's still something I really, really dig. They fit in a lot of pirate stuff. There's Star Wars equivalents of, like, eye patches. One of them is that a droid has one eye out, so it's black or dark. There's no light in it, whereas the other eye has light in it when it's on. So that's a thing. I feel like there's at least one, like, mechanized peg leg. Yeah, I don't remember everything about the show. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, Parlay. There is a Star Wars equivalent of walking the plank. And yeah, it really does feel like, really diving into pirates in Star Wars. Something that we've known there was, it's mentioned here and there. I'm sure, to be clear, I'm sure some of the books and comics and games and such go more into them as well. I've played some of the games, never read any of the books or comics. I have no issue with them. I don't know. It just hasn't happened. And yeah, I think that does. Yeah, right. Some other stuff that we expect from these by now. Right, and to be clear, I'm not saying all of this as, like, negatives. Disney does continue to affirm that diversity is our strength. 100% agreed. I hope that eventually it will lead to them actually treating their employees better, but, for the time being, I do appreciate at least that they do put it in their media. I'm not letting it distract me from their various wrongdoings, but yeah, it's something at least. The let's see, and also proving, yeah, the fact that not everyone is a straight white cis het man, although most of them are het, and certainly I believe all are cis, but that doesn't mean that they're bad actors. But yeah, and several of these things are really just very smoothly worked in. Like, they don't make a huge deal out of the fact that one of the 4 kids that we follow has 2 moms, in a sapphic relationship. So, maybe adoption, maybe IVF, unclear. But yeah, they don't make a big deal out of it. They're just there, living their lives, just like in real life. It comes as a shock to many conservatives, but minority individuals, a lot of them just want to live their lives in peace. Just they want to contribute to society. They want to be around their loved ones. That's it. But yeah, the of the kids, 2 of the 4 are girls. One of the girls is Asian and appears to be either on the spectrum or at least spectrum coded, maybe the Star Wars equivalent of being on the spectrum. And as someone with ADHD and having tried, not always succeeded in trying to help, okay, so let's see, I gotta make sure that the term changed recently. Let's people on the autism spectrum. I'm probably gonna mess up if I get more specific. Yeah, it means a lot to me to see that kind of representation. And one of the boys is either light-skinned black person or possibly biracial. Some, yeah. And they do bring up some of the issues that, minorities face. And by and large, they do a really good job exploring these issues. And let's see, then we have the... but overall, they're, yeah, most of the time, they are just regular people. It's not a constant thing. Just every so often an issue will come up. The show is fairly serialized. There is this thing of individual episodes tend to make up individual adventures along the way. I have heard a lot of people compare this to The Goonies and Stranger Things. I haven't watched those. I might at some point. I don't have an issue with it, really. But certainly I do 100% second, third, whatever. I agree with those who compare it to E.T. and, let's see. Oh, actually, yeah, E.T. And there are 2 things that this made me think of were the original Neverending Story movie, Wolfgang Peterson, and the Last Starfighter is what it's called. Very much like kids off on an adventure by themselves kind of thing. Now, the show sets up mysteries over the course of it, and I will say, by the end, most of them have been answered. Some people have felt they were satisfactory. I don't completely agree. It's especially the fact that there were places to go that they just don't go. But personally, if you haven't watched any episodes yet, or if you're early in the show and you're watching this video right now, my recommendation is to try not to get too invested in the mysteries and their answers and just focus on other stuff, because there is a lot to love here. But yeah, I thought that it was going to get a little more political than it ended up being. What there is of politics is largely progressive, so 100% in favor of that. And let's see, yeah. Yeah, all 4 characters do have personalities and arcs, which I very much appreciate. it has been noted that they do basically slot into, like, this is a New Hope babies. You know, this is the child or tween version. You know, I think they are supposed to be like 12 years old, all four of them. You know, yeah. If A New Hope was about 12-year-olds, and yeah, actually, I guess that is pretty much about it. You know, the four kids slot into the main and major characters quite nicely. Jude Law does phenomenal. You know, I already mentioned the acting in general. Yeah, Jude Law, really, really good. And I can say very little about his character. I'll just say I absolutely dug him. So glad he's still acting. Like, been a while, you know, been decades, and he's still just so good. And this does feel like one of those. It's one of those where it feels like it's the part he was born to play. Like, it really plays to several of his strengths as an actor, and I think I will leave it at that. So the show, Star Wars. George Lucas famously said he made the Star Wars movies for 12-year-olds. This one takes that one step further and centers on the 12-year-olds, and I think it works. You know, 100%. If that's not your kind of thing, I wasn't sure it was going to be my kind of thing. I do not watch very much stuff that is, like, centering on teens and younger and such. You know, I'm not going to pretend like I don't watch media that is made, at least in part, for teenagers. You know, I watch a lot of comic book adaptations. Most of those are made for teenagers, but yeah, I would probably not have watched this if it wasn't Star Wars. I kind of made the decision that I'm going to watch everything Star Wars that I can. Everything official. I don't know that I'm going to get into, like, fan films. I know there's a bunch. I'm not dissing them. I'm 100%. I realize some of them are incredibly well made. Now, yeah, it's about 12-year-olds, and they talk and act like 12-year-olds. You know, there's a bit of a rivalry early on. I won't say exactly what happens later. I'll just, from very early on, there's some rivalry between the boys and the girls, you know, and yeah, just the way that they act around each other, their interpersonal relationships feel very informed by their ages and the overall situation. It does not feel like it's a common thing for, like, screenwriters to fall into this trap of basically writing kids as just little adults. You know, they'll talk and act like just little adults, and that's just not that compelling to watch. You know, it just, and that never happens here. This is very much, you know, this was, let's see, Risks Are Too Bad to check, but this was created and developed by, I want to say his name is, like, John Watts, who directed the 3 MCU Spider-Man movies, and I want to say the other person was the guy behind all of those animated Star Wars shows, Dave Filoni, you know. And yeah, you know, it's not news that they understand teenagers. You know, we've seen that in their other work, but it's still nice to see. You know, I'm glad that they were the ones making this instead of someone who didn't fully understand how, yeah. Right, I really like how this uses Jedi and Force powers. I'm not going to go into more detail. I found it very interesting, and I definitely think the time has come for something interesting with Jedi and Force powers. And they've been doing a pretty decent job of that recently. You know, here, The Acolyte, certainly some of Ahsoka as well. There's some major elements there that also, so yeah, you know, really appreciate that Disney also realize that just, yeah. I think that does more or less cover, right, yeah, so 12 plus age rating means that they can go somewhat intense without going too far. You know, this is not like R-rated, but it is, you know, around PG-13, pushing it sometimes. You know, there are some creepy, scary moments in this. but they never go past what a 12-year-old can handle without being traumatized, and they do go past what, like, an 8-year-old could handle. You know, like, if you remember your teenage years, you will remember it's really frustrating if people act like you're still a child, you know, and yeah, they do a really solid job here. Yeah, I think that it... Right. I suppose I should say, so as I record this, there is 1 season, 8 episodes. It's unclear if they're going to make more, so I'm doing this now while the first season is fresh in my mind. If they release more seasons and I feel like any of what I've said here is, you know, really challenged in some major way, I'll do another video talking about that. Yeah. In closing, my ranking from worst to best of all of these Disney Plus Star Wars live action shows: The Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, The Acolyte, The Mandalorian, Andor. I did do that on purpose. I can't help it. Yeah. I rate this 8 PG-13 adventures for PG-13, you know, aged. Yeah, that engages very enjoyably with pirates. Out of 10.